Just when I thought things couldn't get worse for Stranger Things, I watched the Tales from 85 trailer and had a generational crash out over it. Now, yes, the existence of the show itself came as no surprise because it was announced earlier in 2025. But what I found to be a surprise is the fact that it is allegedly going to be canon to the Stranger Things universe between seasons 2 and 3. If you, like me, have seen the trailer, you'll know why that is already a huge problem because the trailer itself already reveals several new plot holes, inconsistencies, or general continuity errors with the main show. Watching this trailer to me further solidified that the Duffer Brothers do not care about their own continuity. Now I know they are not the showrunners for this show, but they are creatively involved and they are executive producers. But let's get into it. So what's the big deal? What am I even talking about? What sorts of inconsistencies or continuity errors are there in this trailer alone? Starting with what I think is the most obvious continuity error, the presence of monsters from the Upside Down between the events of season 2 and season 3. In season 2, in the finale, we see that 11 successfully closes the gate. And based on the rules very clearly previously established by the show, whenever the gate is closed, there should be no monsters alive in the right side up in Hawkins. That has remained very consistent throughout each season. But now, based on the trailer we just got for Tales from 85, there are several new types of monsters we have never seen before, all from the Upside Down, that are present and active in Hawkins during the winter of 85, around 6 months before the events of season 3. There is not supposed to be a gate open during the winter of 85. Season 3 explicitly showed us the Russians opening the gate successfully for the first time in Hawkins during the summer of 85. So as it stands now, based on the trailer, without having seen the show, because they could offer up some sort of explanation in the show, however, I don't think there is an explanation they could offer up without contradicting the previous rules they had established for the show, there should be no monsters present and active in Hawkins during the winter of 85. Because again, there is no gate open during the winter of 85. The trailer also showed us a scientist from Hawkins' lab appearing to hunt down a monster, perhaps a monster that escaped from Hawkins' lab. This also does not make sense because at the end of season 2, we saw that Hawkins' lab was shut down and that everybody who worked there, or at least a lot of people who worked there, were arrested. And this was further backed by season 3 when we saw that Hawkins' lab was indeed abandoned when Hopper and Joyce went back there to investigate. Now, yes, there was the Russian Terminator stalking them, following them, who attacked them in Hawkins' lab. But from what we saw, the lab and the scientists that were working there were no longer there after season 2. So there should be no scientist working near Hawkins' lab during the winter of 85. One of the other continuity errors that is bothering me a lot is the fact that if this show is indeed canon, which I believe it is to the best of my understanding, it is, why have the kids never mentioned the events of this show, never mentioned running into several new types of monsters in the main show? This seems like a very significant event, especially after what happened in season 2, where they almost lost Will and were afraid of losing 11 when she closed the gate. So you would think this would be a big deal that would be brought up again at some point in the show. I've seen a lot of comments already memeing on the fact that they're going to finish the show by saying, let's never talk about that happening ever again. But that's illogical. That just does not make sense to me. And then there's the fact that I believe season 3 did imply that there had been no presence from the Upside Down in Hawkins since season 2. It seemed as though things had been relatively quiet between those two seasons. But now it seems like this show, Tales from 85, is showing us one of the biggest encounters the group has ever had with monsters from the Upside Down. Just given the sheer amount of monsters the trailer showed us, and given the new types of monsters the trailer showed us. Again, if I'm right, which I believe I am, because I believe they've been advertising this as a self-contained story within the canon of Stranger Things between those two seasons, the only way they're going to be able to address this is by saying, oh, the characters did talk about it. They just talked about it off screen, in the same way the Duffer Brothers said, oh, Joyce and Hopper did talk about the fact that they knew Henry Creel, they knew Vecna in high school. That conversation just happened off screen. And I hate that. I feel like that is the embodiment of so much of what was wrong with season 5 with regards to all the plot holes, inconsistencies, general continuity errors, unanswered questions, and disregarded plot points. It feels like the Duffers do not care about what came before and do not care about telling a cohesive, consistent story. And the reason I'm speaking about this so often is because Stranger Things was and is one of my favorite shows of all time, and is also one of the biggest shows of all time, at least in modern history. I know it's one of Netflix's biggest shows of all time, so if we don't speak up and don't critique these types of things, if we just shut up and enjoy what we're getting, be happy that we're getting anything at all, as some people, the minority of people, like to tell me in comment sections on TikTok whenever I levy any of these criticisms at the show, we are only further enabling showrunners and studios creating slop like this in the future, thus contributing to the further decline in filmmaking across the board. If showrunners and studios learn that they can do things cheap and they can do things lazy and still get viewership and still get people praising what they're putting out, they won't have an incentive to actually put effort and passion into their projects. Now, to continue with some of the other continuity errors, there is a new character in this show named Nikki. In the main show, Nikki has never appeared and has never been mentioned, but in this show, Nikki is present with the party throughout these encounters with the monsters from the Upside Down. This creates obvious glaring issues in the continuity. First of all, why has this character never been mentioned in the show before? Why has this character never appeared in the show before? Sure, I guess one potential counter argument could be this character dies in this show, but that doesn't solve the issue of this character never being brought up again after the events of this show in the main show. If the main party, the main characters in Stranger Things witness the death of a kid, not only a random kid, but a kid who was a part of their party who was hanging out with them, that would absolutely be a traumatizing event that would likely be brought up in the future. It just makes no sense for there to be a new character witnessing the events that will unfold in Tales from 85, witnessing the horrors of the Upside Down alongside our main party, only to never be brought up again. I mean, this wouldn't matter so much if this show was not canon. If they came out tomorrow and said, this show is not canon, think the MCU's What If show, but with Stranger Things, none of this would matter. But again, that does not appear to be the case. To keep this list rolling, we see from this trailer that Hopper is allowing Eleven to go out in public in a public neighborhood to have a snowball fight with the main party in the front yard of some random house, no less. Maybe I'm wrong about the house being random, but from what I can see, it's not the Wheeler's house, and I don't know off the top of my head whose house this is, but whose house it is isn't really relevant. What is relevant is the fact that Eleven is out in public, not hiding her face, having a snowball fight in this neighborhood, in somebody's front yard. Because season 3 made it very clear that that was a very dangerous thing for Eleven to be doing, and that Hopper was not comfortable with her doing things like that. Before the Starcourt Mall scene with Max, the only place we really see Eleven going to is the hill where Dustin has Cerebro. We do also see her inside of Dustin's house, but she is inside of Dustin's house only in the presence of her friends. She is not out in public. And much like with what we saw in season 5, she was likely transported there in a secretive manner. This makes the very idea of her going to Starcourt Mall with Max in season 3 being such a big deal, such a violation of the rules, seem very, very silly, especially with regards to Mike, because if you'll recall, in season 3, Mike was very unhappy with the fact that Eleven was at Starcourt Mall with Max. He scolded Max about bringing her out in public. Yet in this trailer, not only does Mike not care that Eleven is out in public, but he's the one who goes to the cabin door to invite her out. And he appears to do so very enthusiastically, and he appears to do so without any concern about the potential danger it might pose to Eleven's safety. So that to me feels like another continuity error. Another one, albeit a less significant one, is the fact that Hopper already hates Mike during the events of this show, during the winter of 1985. At the end of season 2, we do see there was a conflict between Mike and Hopper, but the conflict stemmed from Mike's frustration and anger with Hopper for hiding Eleven for all of that time. In that scenario, Hopper seemed to be very understanding and was trying to allow Mike to let that anger out. Now, yes, in season 3, we do see that Hopper is extraordinarily fed up with Mike himself and Mike and Eleven spending time together, but it was very clearly explicitly stated by Hopper himself that the reason he was so fed up is because they've been spending every single day together for the last 6 months. This show takes place during the beginning of that 6-month period, because season 3 takes place during the summer of 85, and again, this is during the winter of 85. So to me, it seems a little bit out of character for Hopper to already be threatening Mike's life over spending time with Eleven, considering this is probably the very beginning of their official relationship. Yes, Hopper is very overprotective. That is canon. That is aligned with continuity. But to this degree is not something that really makes sense considering the proximity to the events of the end of season 2 and considering how far away this show is from season 3. Not only that, and this is somewhat of a side tangent, but Eleven witnesses Hopper threaten Mike's life in this trailer, so you would think she would be more understanding about Mike's decision making in season 3 resulting from Hopper's threats in season 3. Because based on this trailer, the very idea of Hopper threatening Mike and Mike being terrified of Hopper would not be a foreign idea to her. It wouldn't come across as a lie because she has literally seen it happen before. But I digress. The point in me going into those continuity errors was to showcase just how many continuity errors there are in a trailer alone for Tales from 85. And again, I strongly believe there is no way these continuity errors can just be explained away in this show. Outside of those continuity errors, there are a few other things that I'm not the biggest fan of. One of those things is the characterization of Steve in this trailer. In season 2, we do see that Steve seems to come to accept the fact that he and Nancy are no longer together and that Nancy is with Jonathan, at least by the end of season 2. And in season 3 at Scoops Ahoy, we see that he has very much moved on. He is hitting on just about every single girl that walks into that ice cream shop. And he ends up developing feelings for Robin before learning that Robin is not straight. Not only that, but when he develops those feelings for Robin, he talks about how much better she is for him than Nancy was. But here in this trailer, much like what we got in volume 1 of season 5, Steve is once again relegated to only being obsessed with Nancy and only thinking about Nancy because we see him on a date with a new girl named Natalie, who he accidentally calls Nancy. This girl, Natalie, says, "I've kind of always had a crush on you, Steve." And Steve says, "I've always had a crush on you too, Nancy." I just don't love that they continue to do this with Steve's character. And outside of that, I don't love that the show seems to continuously insist on showing Steve dating a ton of girls who he does not care about without any real development in that area. I feel like it's getting very old, it's very tired, and I feel like there are so many other aspects of Steve's character they could actually explore in a spin-off show like this. But based on the trailer, it seems as though that is not going to be the case. And given what we got in volume 1 of season 5, as well as in the finale of season 5 when Steve once again jokes about another girl who he's going on some dates with being the one and talks about how there was a girl that he was going on some dates with who ended up not being for him, I feel like this is a fair assumption to make. Something else I don't love is the fact that it seems as though Lucas once again is being relegated to only being Max's boyfriend. It seems as though his focus is simply on yearning for Max. I would love for a spin-off show like this to explore more depth with Lucas's character because that's not something we've really ever gotten in the main show. The closest we ever got to exploring Lucas's character on deeper levels was in season 4 with regards to Lucas trying to become popular and in the finale during the confrontation with Jason saying, "I never should have knocked," acknowledging that popularity is not actually that important. That's it. That's all we got. We got deeper explorations into Dustin's character than we ever got with Lucas, and the reason I bring Dustin up is because I consider Dustin and Lucas to be two main characters that are on the same tier as each other. And what I mean by that is there are other main characters in the show that I think are on a higher tier of importance in the story. Characters like Will, Mike, and Eleven. But again, in this trailer, all we really see is a Lou Max scene where it does seem like Lucas is once again yearning for Max, which I don't inherently have a problem with because Lou Max is one of my favorite couples in this show, and I do love seeing them have time together. It's just the fact that we don't see Lucas do really anything else outside of focusing his efforts on Max. And that's a real shame because I feel like his character has a lot of potential and a lot of depth there. Some other quick items. I'm not the biggest fan of the animation style. That's just a personal preference thing, but I really feel like it's not for me. I love Studio Ghibli animation. I love the animation in the Spider-Verse movies. I don't love this animation. It reminded me a lot of Fortnite, and I don't even play Fortnite, but I've seen plenty of clips of Fortnite and it reminded me of that. Or maybe a hybrid between Fortnite and Arcane, but not a good hybrid. I also struggle hearing the characters' voices sound so different from what the characters actually sounded like during this time, except for Mike Wheeler. The voice actor for Mike Wheeler is making Mike sound a whole lot like season 2, season 3 Mike. But for me personally, nobody else sounded like the characters that I know and love from those seasons. And to clarify, this is not an objective critique, this is not an objective issue, it's just an issue that takes me out of the story personally and makes me less excited to watch this show. I could keep going on about some personal gripes, but ultimately I think I have made my point with regards to my concerns about Stranger Things Tales from 85. It's just a shame that it's been 1 month and already it feels like they're going to be milking this franchise for everything it's worth. Because this show comes out in April, only 4 months after the finale of Stranger Things, the main show. So they're not even giving it room to breathe. It's just a shame. It is a bummer that I feel the way that I do about what once was my favorite show of all time. And with regards to seasons 1 through 4 and most of volume 1 still is one of my favorites, if not my favorite show of all time. Believe me, it has brought me no joy to feel so negatively about this show after volume 2. If you go look at my other platforms, my TikTok, and you scroll on my Stranger Things playlist, you'll see there was not a single negative video before volume 2 released. And that includes content from the beginning of season 4 onwards, because I made my account in 2021, so with regards to Stranger Things, the only seasons I covered in their entirety were seasons 4 and 5. I like being positive. I do not like making super negative content. I don't like feeling badly about the things that I once loved. But here we are. This is the reality we are living in, or at least the reality I am living in, and I do feel a responsibility to voice my critiques about things like this. Because as I said earlier in this video, and as I touched on in my last video where I talked about seeing the Lord of the Rings extended editions in the theater for the first time, the same month as seeing the Stranger Things finale in the theater for the first time, I genuinely believe if we do not speak up about things like this, more things like this will continue to happen in the film industry. And things as a whole will never get better. Things will only continue to decline. That's why you will never see me agree with the crowd of people who say, just enjoy what you're getting. Just be grateful. Just be happy that you're getting anything at all. Because in the art of filmmaking, and yes, that includes the creation of TV shows like Stranger Things, those people are a major part of the problem. That being said, if you've seen the Tales from 85 trailer, let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. Let me know if you have the same concerns with regards to continuity that I talked about in this video in the comments below. If you like this video and you're feeling generous, hit like, hit share. Sharing helps a lot. And I am still working on those 3 1+ hour video essays. I'm hoping I can have at least 2 of them out by the end of this month. The third one, the full rewrite of volume 2 and the finale, will definitely not be out this month because that one is going to take a very long time for me to put together. I want to take my time and make sure I am writing it to the best of my ability. But that's all for now, so I will see you in the next video.